New in the last 5 minutes U.S. Adds conspiracy, lying counts against Gates in new filing in the last 15 minutes. Rick Gates now charged with lying to Mueller's office, set to plead guilty. Former Trump campaign aide Gates to plead guilty. Mueller files new charges against Trump advisor Gates. Guilty plea expected. Rick Gates, former Trump campaign official, expected to plead guilty in the last half hour. Rick Gates set to plead guilty to conspiracy and false statement charges. Gates set to plead guilty to conspiracy and false statement charges. Read Rick Gates plea document reports. Former Trump campaign associate to plead guilty in Russia probe. Rick Gates, former Trump campaign aide, set to plead guilty, reports ex-Trump campaign aide Rick Gates expected to plead guilty in Russia probe. Rick Gates appearing for plea hearing in the last hour. Ex-Trump campaign aide Gates expected to plead guilty Friday. New charges filed against Rick Gates ahead of plea hearing. Former Trump campaign advisor Rick Gates will plead guilty. Report, former Trump campaign official to plead guilty document. Gates superseding criminal information. Rick Gates to plead guilty, cooperate with Mueller in Russia probe. Source, FMR. Trump campaign aide Rick Gates to plead guilty. Former Trump aide Rick Gates expected to plead guilty. How Manafort's inability to convert a PDF file to Word helped prosecutors. Rick Gates expected to plead guilty in plea agreement. Former Trump advisor Rick Gates to plead guilty in the last 2 hours. Trump campaign aide Rick Gates to plead guilty in Mueller investigation. Gates close to pleading guilty in Mueller probe. Source says ex-Trump campaign aide agrees to guilty plea in Russia probe. Ex-Trump campaign advisor to plead guilty in Russia investigation. Mueller is about to take a big step closer to Trump. Ex-Trump campaign aide Rick Gates agrees to guilty plea in Russia probe. Trump's former campaign manager faces further fraud charges. Former Trump aide Rick Gates to plead guilty in Mueller's Russia probe. Mueller files new charges against Manafort and Gates. Trump associate Rick Gates will plead guilty, cooperate with Robert Mueller app. Rick Gates expected to plead guilty in Russia probe. Rick Gates expected to plead guilty in Russia probe in the last 4 hours. Rick Gates pleads guilty. TK Konstantin Kilimnik's Prism Accessible Communications NYT, former Trump aide Rick Gates to plead guilty in Mueller probe. Manafort deputy Rick Gates set to plead guilty Friday. Report Rick Gates, ex-Trump advisor, to plead guilty and cooperate with Mueller. Ex-Trump advisor Richard Gates expected to plead guilty in Mueller probe. Rick Gates, Paul Manafort's business partner, expected to plead guilty. Gates confirms to friends he'll plead guilty. Former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates expected to offer guilty plea. Rick Gates expected to plead guilty in Mueller probe. Mueller tightens the noose and breaks Rick Gates. Former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates set to plead guilty. Trump campaign aide Gates to plead guilty today, say reports. Gates to plead guilty in Mueller probe. Ex-Trump aide to plead guilty in Russia probe. Report, Rick Gates expected to plead guilty in Mueller probe. Ex-Trump aide Rick Gates expected to plead guilty. How the Russia investigation entangled Rick Gates, a Manafort protege. Former top Trump aide Rick Gates expected to plead guilty. NYT, Rick Gates to plead guilty and deal with Mueller.